Welcome, everybody, to episode 36. 36, right? Am I right? Of no particular reason, with your host, Kerri Lewis, alongside of my amazing co host, Yankov. And we are here to have conversations about everything and nothing, really, whatever comes to our mind in any given moment. So, what is going on in your world today, my amazing friend Yanko?
I'm just enjoying life as usual. It's Friday. Weather, it's good. So we can't complain about that. And I'm excited to get to do a sitting with you and talk about anything and everything. Isn't that exciting?
It sure is. I will tell you, I'm a little tired. I had a busy day yesterday and I did not sleep as what I went to bed past my bedtime and was up at 5 and I'm like, I like my sleep, man. I like my sleep.
I can relate as well for the sleeping part because the time change is still affecting me in a way, and it affects the family and the whole thing. Like if you get to a habit of like going to bed at a certain time and getting up and eating in certain times, this whole thing goes just out of the window. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. And I mean, I like you. I really, truly love my life. I mean, even in the icky, sticky moments, I just love this human experience. And yet I found myself being cranky pants last night and did not have the capacity to hold space for another cranky pants that was in my vicinity. And so it just served as a reminder that sleep serves me well. And I sometimes shouldn't talk when I'm tired.
If I'm tired, if I'm asleep, like I might not even be conscious when I'm talking to you. Like I might be like in semi zombie mode when I won't even remember what inspired.
Yeah. You know, that leads to two things I think that would be really good to touch upon today is
Okay.
one, I was very aware that I was not in a space to have a conversation with a said person who's related to me, who I love very dearly. And this person kept pushing it. And as a result, my resolve to stay, no, I was still loving, but I was not able to deliver a message that could be received without being taken personal. And so I'm curious, what is your experience around having boundaries about your capacity to have conversations when you're either tired or, moving through heavy stuff? How do you navigate that when other people like kind of push back on that boundary?
I just have to stay my ground. That's pretty much it. You can't change the other person. You can only reflect on you and keep saying, "Hey, now it's not the time. Like now it's not the time. Yeah, let's do this later. Let's do this later." That's all I can say. But I might be at the point where I'm not even capable of like being in that space because like if I'm on my first sleep like zombie mode. I don't know if you ever experienced that where you're like so deep at a first sleep you don't even remember what inspired, or what kind of conversation you had with anybody because you weren't really conscious. You just went on, and the body it's so asleep that you don't like you're not there, like almost like not there. If you're tired to that point, and I had experiences like that where, I won't even remember like what inspired. Um, the freshest one is, a week or two ago, I went to sleep. My little guy didn't want to go to sleep, so they wanted to stay late a little bit, but I was tired, and I'm like, okay, it's my time. So I let him do his thing. I went to sleep and then I don't remember anything. But apparently he brought in this little toy that it's like a egg, and he has a chicken in, and it clicks and it opens up and the chicken pops up and he goes like boop, 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 or whatever. So he decided to bring it next to me while I'm sleeping to entertain me while I'm sleeping, and I don't remember none of that. Like, apparently we had a conversation, but I don't remember anything. My wife was cracking about it. So
That's interesting. I can't say that I have those type of experiences, but I will tell you, I think that this leads to a important point around mental health because I'm very passionate about it. Sleep is critical to function at optimal capacity in this human body. It just simply is. And I really work to honor sleep because I know, I mean, there's just so many benefits to it in terms of regeneration, being able to store memories, process, but even I think more importantly, it helps you make better food choices when you're awake because you're carb craving if you're sleep deprived. And you're able to hold space for and show up for people in a more loving way. Or at least that's my own, like that is my I know that about myself, which is why part of my self-care routine is to ensure that I get optimal amount of sleep. And generally speaking, I do. Additionally, I have a lot of self-care sprinkled throughout the day so that by the end of the night, I'm not depleted and just incapable of showing up, particularly for my children, because they may have some last minute thing they need me to do. And I realize that when I don't get that sleep, I am not who I really like to be, which is, patient and compassionate and loving and being able to witness other people maybe in their anxiety and sleep deprivation without responding and reacting to it. I don't do as well in that situation. So, sleep is super important. I'm curious what your take is on that, given that you're a hypnotist and you work with the brain in some ways, the subconscious for sure.
well, I can speak about my own experience. Like, I've been to a point where I'll stay 48 hours up with like 4 hours of sleep, you
Why
know?
would you do that?
Well, there were times in life where I had to, like, push my limits and see if I can do it. Um, and the results are, um, it just, mental and physical, not very pleasant. Almost takes me about 3 to 4 days to recover back to normal after I do a marathon of 48 hours staying awake with like a 4 hours of sleep. Like, say, 2 hours here and 2 hours here, where you just like, you know, you're not really giving yourself, not yourself, but your physical body any relaxation or any time to recover. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like, yeah, I
Well,
mean,
I mean, I also think that's why it's important to ground before you go to sleep to kind of, process out your day to the best you can. And for me, anyway, I always practice gratitude before I go to sleep because it gives me the ability to fall into a restful state in peace rather
that's
than
right.
ruminate. And I'll give you a really good example. I'll give you the example. My daughters and I, we were just busy, and both of my daughters, I mean, they I'm in awe of who they are. And I say that biased because I'm their mom, but really, like, both of them show up and they invest so much of their time into their school and helping their friends and stuff. And so we were at their school until almost 10, and me and my daughter, we had a spicy interaction at the end because we were tired. And if I had gone to bed having had that challenging conversation and not grounded myself, I don't know that I would have had as restful of a sleep. And I didn't sleep as many hours as I normally sleep, but I did sleep well in the hours I slept. Um, so I practice gratitude and I focus on the whole day's events, which were really beautiful. Instead of that one moment in time that could have really impacted my ability to rest if I didn't have that strategy. And so I do think it's important to highlight to the community that grounding before going to bed and before going into your day, it can be really, really helpful in ensuring that you get a restful night's sleep.
And to the point, that's exactly what I had in mind. I do the same. um, I won't call it grounding. It's more of a like finding positive things before you drop into sleep,
Yeah.
because usually what people do, they right before they go to bed, they start ruminating in the problems they had through the day. Like, oh, I didn't have money to pay this bill, or maybe they're cutting people at the job, maybe I'll get fired. I gotta look up for strategies to start looking around, maybe make a resume, something else. And what you're really doing is you're programming your subconscious, because you're just like fitting it in. Like you're saying, work on that while I'm like going to sleep.
Yep.
So how would you have a restful night's sleep if you give it all like crap? Like you're not like, hey, I'm grateful that I had like a meeting with my friend and we had a coffee, or that was a great time. That's exciting. Or I had some time with my son in the playground when we had like really great time, or whatever you're grateful for. um, Connecting with people, other things, because usually the way our mind it's constructed, it's made to concentrate on the negative instead of the positive. So it's almost like you want to force yourself into the habit of concentrating in the positive instead of the negative.
Yeah.
And that's a lifestyle choice. It's like going to the gym and working out. Like you gotta get it as a habit. Like it doesn't happen
I
overnight.
love that you said that. It is. It's a habit like anything else. And to your point, I mean, I lift weights regularly. I'd like to say 5 times a week, which is usually true, except I'm navigating an injury. So I push weight with my legs instead right now. But I didn't start doing it 5 times a week, 6 times a week, 7 times a week. I just started and I remembered. And then I liked the way it felt to lift weight and what it did for my body. So I did it again. And then I did it again. And it was just that practice. And, you know, in terms of grounding for the listening audience, I think that it's important to touch upon. So, whenever you engage with somebody in a emotional charge, an emotional interaction, particularly with your kids, guys, because as much as I love them, right, our kids tend to get us worked up a little bit more than other people. um I have like we're in a heightened state of emotion, and a negative energy and a positive energy cannot exist in the same plane. So by not just going to bed in this heightened state of emotion, this angst, right? Because it never feels good to engage with and have a tough, challenging conversation with your loved ones, even if it's necessary. It's not like, oh yeah, yup, we just got into it. No, it feels right? So by sitting in gratitude, I neutralized that energy that didn't really feel good to me, that I didn't feel yummy. And that's how I grounded. And then to Yanko's point, because it is a habit and I'm able to do it very easily at this point, but it wasn't always the case. It took tremendous effort. It's like learning a car, right? In the beginning, you were overthinking everything to make sure that you everything's, but once you got it, I mean, most of us drive on autopilot. We wander. I mean, Yanko will tell you, most people go off into daydreams or, altered states of consciousness just in driving. Um, that's when I then set the space within my own self to be restful to sleep and have a really enjoyable sleep, because my body, my brain isn't trying to work out problems. It's actually in deep gratitude and joy over the experiences that I had cultivated throughout the day.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can give it anything. Like if some people look into outer states of being or like astral travel or getting out of body, there's a lot of techniques that involve that just before you go to sleep, where you just kind of like affirming to yourself, you know, body asleep, mind awake, body asleep, mind awake, and you kind of get to that point where the body is shut off and it's paralyzed, and your consciousness it's awake, and you can get out of body or do different things. I can keep giving examples, like, you know, I've read it somewhere that, and I kind of liked it. I don't remember where I read it, but it was from some book. But the person was giving an example as, like when you go to sleep, before you go to sleep, you take your day clothes off and you put your nice PJs on so you can have fresh, restful sleep. And then the person was like, yeah. And then when you get up in the morning, you ask them, like, do you take your PJs off and you put new clothes on, to start the day fresh and everything? And he goes like, yeah. And then he goes like, well, why won't you do the same with the mind? Why don't you sit and clean your mind before you go to sleep? Like sit and meditate, just ground, clean it up, go to sleep. And then when you wake up in the morning, if there was something that was inspiring through the night, you sit, you let it, circle off, clean it off, and you go with your day. You start off new.
Yeah,
So
and for anybody out there who's like, "Ugh, meditate," which I love, but recently I have to tell you, I do a lot more walking meditation than I do sitting down in a chair at this point. And really, all that involves is being hyper aware of the placement of my foot as I'm walking, the scent in the air, the noises I hear. So it's just being very aware rather than in this quiet state. So if people are like meditate, it could be as simple as a gratitude practice. I mean, guys, it doesn't have to be that deep. And it's so important that I emphasize this, obviously, because I work in addiction and mental health. And when you are operating from that conditioned, routine, overthinking mind, to think about being able to do that can feel really daunting. But if you're like, well, I can take 30 seconds to 1 minute and go through things I'm grateful for, that feels more accessible. It feels easier to consider taking on as a practice. And the other thing I would say, in conjunction to what Yanko was saying, is not only is do I find it very beneficial to ground, to either do gratitude practice, to meditate, to do whatever feels right for you. Get off your screen at least a half hour, an hour before bed. Because even with blue light glasses, blah, 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 you're feeding your mind. And
yep,
more often than not, this cracks me up, because I'm gonna tell you, this happens 100% of the time. People will be like, "Okay, I don't know why I'm so anxious throughout the day. I don't get it." And I'm like, "Well, what do you watch for TV?" They watch Criminal Minds, the ID channel, Cops, some crazy scary movie because it's a Halloween time. Like, I'm like, well, I want you to think about this. What are you feeding your subconscious? Oh, well, it has nothing to do with it. Yes, it does. Or let's even take that out. Let's talk about scrolling on social. Guess what 99% of humans do? Compare. Sally Sue got a new boat. Oh, Joe
that's
Schmo
right.
is looking fine.
That's
Oh,
right.
look at that couple. They look so happy. Oh my God, Illy Billy, she's doing traveling. And then what are you doing? You're judging yourself, you're comparing, and then you're like, oh, and then you resort to lack. even if you don't notice it consciously, your default setting, to Yanko's point, is negativity. Like, we function um automatically in negativity. It's why it feels really, really hard to rewire your brain to positive. You can do it. I've done it. And once you do, the results are so amazing. I can't even put them into words, but it takes effort because it's your natural default mode to think negatively. So if you know that, stop scrolling and comparing yourself. I, to this day, don't compare myself. I don't look at what other coaches are doing. I don't look at what the top motivational speakers are doing, although I listen to some of them. Like, I take, you know, what I need from them as motivation, but I don't compare, because that's the fastest way for me to start to get into lack mindset, and I don't feel the need to do that because it feels icky, and I like to feel good.
Yeah, I was gonna say they even have a word for it. They call it doom scrolling. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But not only that, now what I'm seeing more and more with the evolution of AI, there is a lot of like more um, you know, house arrangements or decorations or anything that it's so pleasing geometrically to the eye and everything. People are thinking like, oh, this looks like real. I want to have my house interior done this way or whatever way. And it's not, that's not even reality. It's and that's the other thing. We already don't live in reality in a way. We don't, because we take our perception, whatever we had as an experience of growing up, and we constantly project it and compare it, and we're sending it out. And you go in somewhere, you see something, you're like, oh, I like that, and then you start projecting and you go like, well, how can I get this? Like, how I want to have that or whatever. So it's constant thing. You're never seeing reality. Like you're living almost in your own illusion per se, because you keep
Not almost,
like
you are, because there's 8 billion people with 8 billion perspectives. I guarantee you, if you were to talk to my child, her perspective of what unfolded yesterday would be vastly different than mine. And
no,
that's
I
okay,
know,
right?
I know.
And that actually leads to something else. So I had put a post, oh, my newsletter last week was all about um showing up, doing what feels right for you, because so often I see couples, and one or both of the people in a relationship stop doing what feels right for them because the other person doesn't like it or doesn't
Yep,
understand it. And
yep.
I'm like, are you kidding me? I love that Nana dresses his cosplay. I love that I can go shopping with him to help him pick out outfits, but I am not dressing up his cosplay. And it's a rarity that you'll catch me at a convention. Once in a while, I'll go because I like to take pictures, but not really. Um, but anyway, so I put that post out, and a former employee of mine said something to me about how I showed up for her as a leader. And, it ended up being beautiful, because what I loved about this is she felt brave enough to speak her truth. And I love anybody who's empowered to do that, always. Like, even if it's something that may feel hard for me to hear, to me, I just love it, because everybody is worthy of speaking their truth and being heard, right? And not dismissed or yelled at or punished for it. But as I read this person's comment, I laughed, because our perspectives of that time are still so vastly different, right?
Totally different. Yep.
And, old Kerri would have immediately felt the need to respond, but all I did was thank them for sharing their truth with me, because honestly, that is the gift we give each other, I believe, Yanko, is your perspective and my perspective is different. Your reality and mine's different, right? It's just, but in the sharing of and willing to be vulnerable and say, this is how I view things and stuff, even if we live in different realities, we get to connect with each other on a more like on a deeper, like more visceral way. And that's the gift I think we give each other in vulnerability.
Yep. And that's the power of like love or sharing or whatever you want to call it. Like
Yeah.
you're okay with yourself and you decide to share your experience of yourself with somebody else that like to share their experience of their self with you. So
Yeah.
you can both mix like a party and have a shared experience. Doesn't matter if you're going to be drinking coffee or shopping or whatever that is, because you're still on your own reality, but you're meeting somewhere. And sometimes to me it's hard because if I'm having conversation with somebody and they share their experience or whatever way they see me and they say, well, that's how I see you, this is what you do, da, 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 this and that, and I say, okay, that's your opinion,
Yeah.
it's valid opinion to you, I validate that, but I have a totally different opinion about myself.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing, I really like it. And then they feel like I'm not hearing him. Like I'm not, because like there has to be agreement or something going on. Like you know what I mean? Almost like
Well,
you gotta take my opinion, because that's what I think. You know what I mean? And
well,
that's
go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean
no,
to
that's what I
interject.
was gonna say. That's the hardest part of like being true to yourself. Of like you already have an idea of what you are, but either that idea it's an illusion because you keep digging to finding out who you are, you keep finding different versions of yourself, and you go like you said, old Kerri could have done this, but this is not Kerri anymore because you
Yeah.
keep like changing, you're changing constantly.
Well,
So
and that's the thing is what I think part of what brought a chuckle to my face is, I mean, it had to be 8 or 9 years since I've interacted with this person in any capacity. And yet most people probably like their perspective of everything is based in the past. It's not in this interaction. It's not in how did I show up for you in this moment. It's a culmination. And that's where people struggle because every single one of us is changing all the time. Every interaction, every experience, everything, every season brings with it eh, their challenges, their opportunities to grow. And so we're never the same person ever.
yep,
You
yep,
know, even if you're stuck in unconscious thinking, think about it. And I'll give you a really good example. Just say I'm unconscious and somebody slighted me 10 years ago, right? 10 years later, I'm still not the same person because most likely, if I'm unconscious and I haven't processed that, guess what? I'm more mad at them. I've made up more stories. I think that they're even worse than I did when we first had the interaction because I've had 10 years to make up more stories about all the things about this person. And I laugh so much because I see it in divorce all the time. All the time. You know, I'll be honest, like my ex mother-in-law, oh my God, it blew my mind how much somebody could hate somebody even though they hadn't seen them 20 years. But it's that feeding and feeding. And then you fester, and then you go 30 years and you're like, I have no idea why I hate this person, but you hate them more now than you ever did when you were involved with them. And that is why we're constantly changing, because we're either feeding ourselves the ability to love and to let go and to stay curious, or we're feeding us stories about stuff that happened to us and we're reliving it, right? We're reliving it. We're being re-victimized by it. And as we're re-victimized by it, we're creating more angst and suffering and feelings about the other person or the situation.
I mean, because that's not even giving a service to the other person, because you're seeing some kind of perception version that you made up in your mind about the other person that might or may not be true. Because like, how would you know? Because you using your whatever. There is a lot of like even stories about things like that. One that comes to mind, it's with the two monks that were trying to cross a river or whatever, but they were celibate monks. You probably know that story. And and they got to the river and there was a woman, but they were celibate. They were not allowed to touch women. But the woman asked them, like, would you help me, like, carry me over to the other side? And because current it's like really strong or whatever. So the one of them decided to do it. They went on and continue on with their journey. So I don't remember how long ago it was after that, like a 12 hours later or
Yeah, it
whatever.
was
The one
hours
said
later.
to the one that carried the woman said, "Man, how can you do that? Break your celibacy and carry her on, touch that woman or whatever." He said, "The difference between me and you is that I left the water, that woman at the water. You're still carrying her on now, like the
12
thought.
hours
It's
later.
keep going, and you're
Yeah.
man. I keep feeding it like so
Yeah.
many hours later.
That's how
So,
we unintentionally, right? Because I never want to make people feel badly, because we're all on this journey to learn. But that's how we perpetuate our own suffering. We ruminate and ruminate and ruminate and ruminate. This morning I woke up and you know what I did? I made sure that I wrote an incredibly loving message to my daughter, and I made sure she knew how honored I am to be her mother and how awe I am of who she is and how she shows up. And I even left her a letter and I said, the beauty of the human experience is that we get to start over in each moment. So instead of carrying any angst or frustration or anything from what transpired yesterday, being tired, having given and exerted all of our energy, all of us, to supporting others, I decided to focus on what to me is what we are anyway, and it's love. And I'm always going to come back to love. And I think that more than anything is what I fundamentally know is each moment we can just choose love and we let go of the story around it, because once you're back in love you don't need a story, because love is truth. There's no story needed. It's just truth. It's what we exist in, it's what we co-create in. It's expansive, and so I come back to love as many times as I need to a day. And something you said is, I love the analogy about going to sleep in clothes, waking up in clothes, like that grounding for your day. But I would tell all of you guys and would encourage you guys 100 times over. You can do that endlessly throughout the day. So a driver flips you off, you get irritated, you flip them the finger, and then you're like, oh, that didn't feel good. You immediately choose love. You immediately choose to ground back into, without judging you for being human, without judging the person for being human. And as soon as you do that, you're back in peace of mind. And it is a practice, it takes effort, but eventually it's like riding a bike or driving a car. It just is second nature. It's not that I'm above emotional experiences, it's just how quickly do I come home back to love. And it's pretty quick for me now, but at one point it would take days or weeks or years at some points in my time here.
Good morning, friends. We're glad you're, hanging out with us again on
You
Friday.
gotta put me in touch with Tarek, man. I keep
I,
saying
I'll
it.
send you his, yeah, I'll send you his contact. We actually had a dinner a week or two ago together. Um,
Nice.
and I told him like, why don't you come on the show? Like, we'll love to have you. He's like, oh man, I'm always like, you guys, the timing is just doesn't work for me.
It's
So I
all
said,
good.
I'm sure if you put it out to the universe, things will happen, and one of those days you'll be able to join us. Or who
Yeah.
knows? We might
Yep.
change the time on the show going forward. Things are happening all the time.
It's
Yep,
true. It's true. But I think that, you know, another thing that I want to highlight, this week was a really spicy week for a lot of Americans, guys. And when we talk about other people's expectations, because you were sharing how you love how people share with you their maybe good opinion of you or how they perceive you and stuff. Um, you thank them for it, but you don't take on their perspective. And I'm very much the same way. And, I did a live earlier this week sharing, and I'm full transparency because I leave my life as an open book, because I truly believe if I coach people to be authentic and fully expressed, it's my responsibility to role model that, not just to preach it. I did
that's
not
right.
vote. I didn't vote because I feel very strongly that it's not my place to judge. I don't know. I just don't know. What I can do is sit in love. But to your point about people pushing perspective, my family are staunch voters. They are very, very political and they believe strongly in their positions. And so I took a lot of heat. I did. But the thing is, and what I love about what you said is, I can love them through that. I'm not judging them because that's their experience and it's not right or wrong. It's not good or bad. That's fundamentally where they are in this time and place. And that's okay. And I can also nurture and love myself and feel really comfortable standing by the choices I make that make me feel good. That I can look in the mirror and say, and again, I 100% can attribute every choice I ever make down to love. I come back to love. How do I show up as love? How do I show up as love? If every choice I make can be deduced to that, even if the choices I make contradict other people's ideology or the populist opinion, then I can live with myself. And that to me is my hope that other people get to that level of self-confidence, because it does take courage, and it takes a certain amount of grit. You got to be gritty to be able to hold true to what feels good for you, despite what the people, particularly your family and loved ones, um believe to be true.
Yeah. Um, I'm in totally different pattern perspective now because I'm keep digging and going down the rabbit hole.
I know. But we have way different perspectives. Listen, I love listening to you, but sometimes you're like astro travel and Tanzanar booby to booby, and I'm like, yeah, cool. I don't know what you're talking about, but I love that you're happy.
It just when you start examining yourself, you keep going into like a different levels,
Mm,
and this is the thing where to me it's more of a sharing an experience and hearing other people experience, not something that they acquired as knowledge, not something that they read in a book. Like I read things in the book, but I'll say I read it on a book. But if I had an experience, that'll be like I can speak of my experience about whatever I'm
yeah,
experiencing. And not to say that my experience is going to be valid for other people, because going back to the idea of everyone having their own reality, in my own reality that is true to me, in their own reality that could be true to them. So it's different when you start going through like examining beliefs and thinking like, okay, is there morals in society? Like, are morals like beliefs that are in, imparted on us? Like, you know what I mean? Like different things. Because if you go to the root of like where you're coming as a human, or you're just coming as a clean record, there's nothing. Like your parents give you the name, language, belief system, other things, society around you tells you who you gotta be, or what's moral, what's immoral, and all these other things.
Yeah, I'll buy into that and any of that crap. And I'll tell you, this is what I would say. When you love yourself, morality is ridiculous in the first place, because anybody who's fundamentally grounded in love wishes nothing but love for everybody else. For me, that's unconditional love. Like, I can love everybody because I love myself, and I don't feel the need to make anybody right or wrong. And I honestly believe if you fundamentally love yourself, you don't seek to harm. You don't even need rules like that, because you just operate from a space of service, compassion, empathy, like not empathy taking on other people's experiences, empathy and loving them where they're at without trying to change it. That to me is empathy, true empathy. So yeah, I don't subscribe to this moralistic ideology, and I think the more rules governments place on people and things, the more people resist and rebel anyway, because they feel like they're being conditioned and controlled, and nobody wants to feel that way.
No, that wasn't like what I meant when I said it. It was just like me examining that. One point I examined that structure, like is a belief system and other things like it. Because reality is when you come to understanding, deep understanding that everything it's one creation and it's a one being, then how would you go and harm yourself? And that's where the love for self comes in. Because if you understand yourself, you love yourself, then there's nothing else but self. That's part of the
Right.
illusion. Because like in some of the materials are even speaking to it, like, and they say it's either you're in service to other self because everything itself, or you service to yourself, like where you say, no, I'm not part of this reality, I'm a separate being, and I gotta be of service to me, like whatever serves me.
Yeah.
But that's coming with experience, so it's not like you need to have a morality or you don't. It's when you find who you are in a deeper level, then everything falls apart in like all the things, beliefs, things are coming
Oh
up
yeah,
and
I mean, in the great words of Shakespeare, everything becomes a comedy of errors, because it's hilarious. And that's where you and I can truly say that this human experience is meant for to be fun. But when you're still in that consciousness, like in those consciousness levels, that could feel like a really, really hard statement to hear. So I really get it, but I do get what you're saying. And to your point, if we're all connected and we're all one, we're not going to harm one. I'll never forget when my daughter was appalled because I wouldn't kill a tick. I pulled it off me and I let it go, and she's like, what do you mean you did? I That's my personal preference. If you want to kill a tick, kill a tick. I'm not telling you what you need to do. That's just what I understand. And fundamentally, because I do believe that everything is connected, and I'm not gonna harm anything. Um,
but it's not an idea in your mind. It's what I'm trying to express to our viewers or listeners.
you
it,
mean
it,
the
it
feeling?
becomes, yeah, it becomes a feeling, like, I'll give you an example. If when you sit and you connect with everything, because you're not putting up boundaries, you're taking down your boundaries, because you're one of the, you're part of the whole creation, You're not a separate being that you think you are. And when the boundaries start coming up, then you have a way of feeling everything around you more.
Mhm.
So then you start feeling everyone suffering around in everything. Then how would you want to harm yourself? Like that tick, for example, if you go in and you know that the minute you're gonna, squish it, you're gonna feel his pain of like misery and everything, then you're not gonna do it. It's
Yeah.
not about like right or wrong or somebody taught you or like all my beliefs are that we shouldn't be harming something because then you actually feel this pain. It's like, how do I say that? You look at an animal that it's killed and it's sitting in the table ready to be butchered down and chopped to pieces, and then the person that's sitting there in cutting the meat in, while it's cutting the meat, you're sitting in the side, you're feeling it like somebody's cutting parts of you. That's how the the experience feels like you're sitting there, you've been in the whole thing. Even so the animal it's gone, there's just a physical body. You relate in a way to it is like when you're seeing it like chopping, you have this like like somebody's like you feel it painful. So it's not about like knowing it is an idea in your hand, but having the experience is totally different thing. Then why would you go and do it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a really good point, and I think that, I mean, we could talk about this for days, but you're right in that. I mean, for me, it kind of ties back to why sleep is important, because I can absolutely feel people suffering,
Right.
um, and it's why, for me personally, it I feel called to or led by um source energy, love, spirit, whatever you want to call it, to be that compassion, to be bring that joy to the world, I generally am a pretty playful, really ridiculous, outrageous person. And it's simply because, you know, when people are in suffering, laughter has the ability to break some of that angst up. And then when you can couple that with real compassion and real willingness to see the beauty in the person, um, then then we both benefit, because we're both we're one. I'll never forget, 2 weeks ago I was outside of Starbucks, and there's this homeless gentleman named Daniel, and anytime I walk by him, I acknowledge him and I talk to him, and so I stopped to catch up because I hadn't seen him in a couple months, and I grabbed his hand to shake it, and he was like, "Oh, don't do that, I'm dirty, I smell." And I'm like, "Yeah, I smell too sometimes." And just me saying that was able to let him let go of the judgment of himself, and let me connect with him. And that's why it's important that you and I do what we do, why we trust what we know rather than make it logical, because it's never going to be logical for people until they have that felt experience. And
Right.
why I think I show up passionately in the world to help encourage people to start to do the work, so that they understand that knowing too, that they know it, like it's felt.
The key thing is that when you start connecting with people and opening up, um, it doesn't mean you're becoming emotionless or you don't feel there are things or you're closing up your heart. Your heart tears apart inside. You feel their pain and suffering, and you sit, but there is a deeper knowing that this is what they have to experience. This is their
Yep.
path. It's something that they're going through. So that's all you can do. And it's hard for some people to comprehend how can you like sit, because some people have like a different ideas of how somebody should be or shouldn't be, going back to perception of others and things like that. And that brings up another story that I read that relates to that. Somebody went to a guru and said, Guru, Gia, whoever that is, do you see your disciple? It's like he lost his wife, his kids are sick, he lost his house, he's suffering so much and everything. Like, why aren't you doing something? You're supposed to be like a holy man. You're supposed to be able to like help people and do things like that. Why aren't you helping? He's your favorite disciple or whatever. And then he says, don't you think like I feel he's suffering and everything? Don't you know that I'm like living through what he's going through? But in the same time, this is what he has to do, because if he doesn't, then he'll have to repeat it again. So all I can do is sit and hold space with him and let him, go through his emotion.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I think you and I have talked extensively about this off camera and conversations around the work that we do with people. And I think we're both at the same fundamental knowing that, and I share this with all my clients, I don't have an expected outcome in the work that I do with people, because if I have an expected outcome, then I'm creating a judgment on what their journey is supposed to be, and I
You
have
already
no idea.
condemned them. Yep.
I don't.
Yep.
What I do know is that I can bear witness to their curiosity, and having gone through all of the work myself and still doing it because I'm still growing and unfolding, um, I'm able to give people permission, which is something most people don't do. They're waiting for somebody to give them permission, and I do that until they can give themselves permission. Now I give myself permission to do whatever. But there was a time where I needed somebody else to see that in me to help me then learn to give myself permission. But we can't have expected outcomes of anything. It's one where suffering comes in. But again, my job isn't to control the narrative of another individual's journey. It can't be, because then ego gets involved. It's simply to lovingly call them on the lies they tell themselves, because people lie to themselves all the time. Um, and to hopefully make their journey through healing a little bit easier than mine was, because they have at least a framework that will help navigate that terrain for them.
Yeah, and this is where I think um, freedom of choice, freedom of will comes in, because you always have the choices, and that wraps beautifully back to what you're saying. Like every moment to moment, you're a totally different person. You can
Mhm.
do so many different choices. You can do so many different things, because the minute you important somebody and you say this is how you're supposed to be, then you already made the choice for them. You're breaking their freedom of will. Like you're not allowing them to be themselves.
It's interesting. So I started working with somebody, and this person, every time I talk to them, they tell me about how many people they talk to. How many people they talk to. How many people they talk to. And I'm like, stop doing that. I was like, at some point, I want you to get so good that you don't even talk to me. Because if you are so think about it. You have a tough interaction with your kid. Then I pick up the phone. Hey, Yanko, you'll never believe what happened. Ugh. Now Yanko shares his opinion. Then I pick up the phone and call my mom. Hey, mom,
Right.
your granddaughter. Right now I got my mother's opinion. I lost sight of how I needed to navigate the situation that happened for me, with me, and somebody else, because I'm just taking on all of these other narratives. And so, again, I really encourage people. It's We all have our own experience, and some people's mirrors are polished a little bit more than others, meaning I've dusted off some more cobwebs than others, but that doesn't mean I ain't got cobwebs. So I can be a guide, But my job is not to tell you what you need to do. And anybody who tells you what you need to do is taking away your ability to learn yourself. And that is where I have an issue with the mental health industry. Really, I'm be honest. As Yanko would say, I am not a doctor, and yet I have a problem with that. Um,
There you
I
go.
said it, but I do because we're telling people what they need to do and stuff, and that's how do like uh we are not a puzzle piece to be fit into the exact pieces. We're all different pieces, and we need to experience our pieces the way we need to experience them.
The way I see it is we're here to inspire you, to give you our perspective. Take it,
Challenge
don't
you on
take it.
your lies.
Yeah, it's maybe it'll give you different way to see how life is. Maybe you'll wonder about things. I don't know, but this is
Yeah.
why we're here for no particular reason.
I know, but no particular reason. All right, Yanko, we got 4 minutes left. What's one thing you want to leave our listening audience with? Will I cough up a lung over here?
Oh, you're doing way better than last week. So
Oh, yeah.
that it'll take a little bit. I would like to thank our audience for sticking around and watching our show, sharing it with friends and other people, and sending us comments, feedback. Jumping on like Tarek and supporting and saying hello. We appreciate you very much, and this is what we're here for. Thank you.
I'm gonna leave you with a little song because it comes to my heart. You all are shining bright lights in a world that sometimes feels dark. So keep being brave, keep laughing loud. And in the moments when you feel sad, well, just scream and shout. I am love. Until next time, guys, we'll
I
check
love it so much. Thank you.
you.